She didn't even hesitate, Evelyn whispered, her lips barely moving. Your wife slept with my husband. If you're smart, you won't ask if it's true. You'll ask how long. Julian didn't turn his head, but something inside him already had. The ballroom shimmered with controlled perfection crystal chandeliers suspended above polished conversations, tailored suits brushing past sequined gowns, laughter measured just enough to signal success without desperation. It was the kind of room Julian Mercer understood completely. He had built his life for rooms like this. A senior partner at one of Manhattan's most respected corporate law firms, Julian moved through the crowd with quiet authority. His name carried weight. His marriage, to Clara Mercer, public relations executive, social strategist, impeccably composed, was often cited as an example of modern partnership done right. They were photographed often, smiling, aligned, predictable, until the whisper. He hadn't noticed Evelyn approach.
One moment he was listening to a hedge fund manager talk about offshore restructuring. The next, there was a shift in the air beside him. Subtle, intentional. She didn't even hesitate. The voice was low, controlled, almost intimate. Not flirtatious, not emotional. Precise. Julian turned slightly, enough to acknowledge her presence without fully committing attention. She was striking not in a loud way, but in a way that demanded a second look. Dark hair pulled back, posture exact, eyes that didn't wander. "Excuse me?" he said. "Your wife," she continued, as if clarifying a business detail. "Clara Mercer. She slept with my husband." Silence didn't fall around them. The room continued as it always did, glasses clinking, deals forming, reputations expanding. But for Julian, something shifted out of alignment. Not shock, not yet. Just resistance. "You have the wrong person," he replied evenly. Evelyn shook her head once. Not defensive, not aggressive, certain.
I don't make mistakes like that.
Julian studied her now, fully. There was no tremor in her voice, no theatrical anger, no visible agenda. If this was manipulation, it was executed with unnerving discipline. "Who are you?" he asked.
"Someone who already confirmed it," she said. "You haven't. That's the difference between us." That landed harder than the accusation itself, because she was right. Julian hadn't checked, hadn't needed to. His life operated on verification, documentation, evidence, not whispers in crowded rooms. "You're asking me to believe a stranger," he said. "I'm asking you to doubt someone you trust," Evelyn corrected. "Those are very different risks." Julian felt it then, a fracture. Not in certainty, but in assumption. A microscopic crack, barely visible, but real. "How long?" she added quietly. "That's the only question that matters now." Julian didn't answer. He couldn't. Because for the first time in years, he didn't have control over the information in front of him.
Evelyn reached into her clutch, pulled out a small card, and placed it against the edge of the table beside him. "No pressure," she said. "But if you decide you want the truth instead of comfort, call me." Then she walked away. No hesitation, no backward glance. Julian stood still for exactly 3 seconds before picking up the card. Evelyn Cross. No title, no company, just a number. Later that night, the apartment felt too quiet. Clara was already home. She stood in the kitchen, barefoot, a glass of white wine in her hand, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as Julian entered, offering a soft smile that had always felt effortless. "You're late," she said. "How was the event?" Normal tone, normal posture, normal everything. Julian set his keys down deliberately, watched her, measured. "There was an interesting conversation," he said. Clara tilted her head slightly, curious but not cautious. "Oh?" Julian stepped closer. Not aggressive, not hesitant, direct. "A woman approached me," he said. "She claimed you're having an affair." The silence this time was real. Clara didn't react immediately. No gasp, no outrage, no immediate denial. Just a pause. A fraction too long. Julian saw it. Not the guilt, the calculation.
That's ridiculous, she said finally, placing her glass down. Who was she? I don't know, Julian replied. But she seemed very sure. Clara let out a soft breath, almost a laugh. People say things at those events all the time. Jealousy, rumors. I asked you a direct question, Julian interrupted. Calm, controlled. Are you having an affair? Clara met his eyes now, steady. No. One word. Clean. Practiced. Julian nodded slowly. Then help me understand something, he said. Why didn't you deny it immediately? That was the moment. The shift. Clara's expression changed, not dramatically, but enough. A flicker of something unguarded before it was pulled back into place. I just didn't think it deserved that level of reaction, she said. Julian held her gaze, and knew. Not the full truth, but enough to realize Evelyn hadn't come out of nowhere. That night, Julian didn't sleep. He lay awake, replaying every conversation, every delay, every subtle inconsistency he had ignored because it didn't fit the narrative he preferred. By morning, one thing was clear. He had two choices: believe his wife or verify her. But somewhere beneath those options, something else had already taken root. A third path. Control. Julian picked up the card again. Evelyn Cross. He stared at the number for a long moment before dialing. She answered on the second ring. I was wondering how long it would take, she said. Julian's voice was steady. I want everything, he said. No fragments, no games. A pause. Then, good, Evelyn replied, because if we're going to do this, we don't stop halfway. Julian didn't ask what she meant, not yet, but he didn't hang up either. And that was the moment the line was crossed. Morning arrived without resolution. Julian stood at the window, the skyline washed in pale gray light, his reflection faint against the glass. Below, Manhattan moved with mechanical certainty. Taxis, early commuters, the quiet rhythm of a city that never questioned itself. Inside the apartment, uncertainty lingered like a second presence. Clara moved through the kitchen with practiced ease. Coffee poured, toast browned, her phone rested face down on the counter. Something Julian had never noticed before, because it had never mattered before. Now, everything mattered. You didn't sleep, Clara said without turning. Julian didn't answer immediately. He watched the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way her movements were just slightly too precise. I was thinking, he said. About last night? She asked. Yes. Clara exhaled softly, as if already tired of the conversation. Julian, I told you it was nothing. Some random woman trying to stir up drama. Julian stepped closer, stopping just short of the kitchen island. She knew your name, he said. My name? She didn't hesitate. She didn't improvise. Clara turned now, leaning back against the counter, arms loosely crossed. Defensive, but controlled. People Google things, she replied. You're not exactly invisible. That's not an answer, Julian said. It is, Clara insisted. Just not the one you want. Julian studied her. There it was again, that shift. Not panic, not guilt in the obvious sense, but resistance, as if she were managing him, not responding to him. Then give me the one I want, he said. Clarity, details, something I can verify. Clara's jaw tightened slightly. You're interrogating me now? I'm asking you a direct question, Julian said evenly, and I expect a direct answer. I already gave you one. Julian shook his head once. You gave me a denial, he said, not an explanation. Silence stretched between them. Clara reached for her coffee, taking a slow sip, buying time. Julian noticed. He noticed everything now. What exactly do you want me to explain? She asked. How I'm not having an affair? That's not something you prove, Julian. That's something you trust. Trust isn't blind, he replied. It's built on consistency. And I haven't been consistent? She challenged. Julian didn't hesitate. No. That landed. Clara's expression hardened, just for a second. Give me one example, she said. Julian stepped closer, placing his hands lightly on the counter. "Last Thursday," he said, "you told me you had a late client dinner in Midtown, but your calendar shows you blocked the evening as internal strategy. No location, no attendees." Clara blinked once. Barely noticeable, but Julian saw it. "I had to simplify the entry," she said quickly. "It was last minute." "With who?" "A client." "Which one?" Clara hesitated, a fraction too long. Julian felt something cold settle into place. "Do you hear yourself?" she said finally, her tone sharpening. "This is insane. You're dissecting my schedule over a rumor." "I'm verifying inconsistencies," Julian corrected. "That's what I do." "At work," Clara snapped, "not in your marriage." Julian straightened. "And what happens when my marriage starts resembling a case file?" he asked. That silenced her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Clara shook her head, pushing herself off the counter. "I'm not doing this," she said, walking past him. "If you've already decided I'm guilty, there's nothing I can say." Julian turned, watching her retreat toward the bedroom. "I haven't decided," he said calmly. "That's why I'm asking." Clara stopped at the doorway. For a second, Julian thought she might turn back. Explain, confess, something. But she didn't. "You're letting a stranger get into your head," she said without looking at him. "That's the real problem here." Then she disappeared into the bedroom, the door closing with quiet finality. Julian stood alone in the kitchen. The coffee had gone cold. He didn't touch it. Instead, he reached for Clara's phone. It was still on the counter, face down, unlocked. That, too, was new. Clara had always been careful. Not secretive, but structured. Passwords, privacy, boundaries. Now, suddenly accessible. Too accessible. Julian picked it up slowly, his mind already parsing the possibilities. Careless mistake, or calculated gesture. He unlocked the screen. Messages, emails. Nothing unusual at first glance. Threads with colleagues, group chats, scheduling confirmations. Clean. Too clean. Julian's eyes narrowed slightly as he scrolled. No gaps, no suspicious names, no late-night exchanges. It was curated. That was the word. Not natural absence, but intentional order. Julian set the phone back down exactly where it had been. If she was hiding something, she wasn't doing it carelessly. Which meant this wasn't new. Later that afternoon, Julian sat in his office overlooking Park Avenue, a legal brief open in front of him, untouched. Across from him, Daniel Reeves, his junior associate, was explaining a merger timeline. Julian wasn't listening. "And if we adjust the filing to next quarter, we can avoid the—" "Daniel," Julian interrupted. Daniel stopped mid-sentence. "Yes?" Julian leaned back slightly. "What do you do when something doesn't add up?" he asked. Daniel frowned, confused. "In a case? In anything?" Daniel hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "You gather more data," he said. "Verify assumptions. Look for patterns." Julian nodded slowly. "And if the person you're verifying is someone you trust—" Daniel shifted in his seat. "Then you separate emotion from analysis," he said. "Otherwise, you miss things." Julian held his gaze for a moment, then nodded once. "That'll be all," he said. Daniel blinked. "Right, I'll send the updated draft." He left quickly, the door closing behind him. Julian turned his chair toward the window. Separate emotion from analysis. That was the problem. He had never needed to apply that principle to his own life before. That evening, Clara returned home later than usual. Julian was already there, waiting. She paused slightly when she saw him sitting in the living room, the lights dim, the atmosphere heavier than usual. "Working late?" he asked. Clara set her bag down. "Something like that." Julian nodded. "Where?" Clara froze for a fraction of a second. "Then, office," she said. Julian watched her. "Which one?" he asked. Clara frowned. "What?" "You have two locations," Julian said calmly. "Midtown and Brooklyn. Which one were you at?" Clara's lips parted slightly, then closed. Julian felt it again, that shift, that crack widening. For the first time since this began, she had no immediate response, no deflection, no explanation. Just stillness. Julian took a step closer. "Do you want to correct your answer?" he asked. Clara swallowed. Clara swallowed. Julian, do you want to correct your answer? He repeated. Her composure cracked. Not completely, but enough. I didn't think it mattered, she said. Julian's expression didn't change. That's not what I asked. Clara's voice dropped, quieter now. I had a meeting, she said. It ran late. I didn't want to get into details. With who? Clara hesitated, again. Julian exhaled slowly. Not angry. Not yet. Just certain. You don't get to choose which details matter anymore, he said. Clara looked at him, then really looked. And something in her eyes shifted. Not guilt, not fear. Recognition. As if she finally understood. This wasn't going away. That night, after Clara had gone to bed, Julian sat alone in the dark. The city lights flickered through the windows, distant and indifferent. He picked up his phone, scrolled to a number he had saved only hours earlier. Evelyn Cross. His thumb hovered for a second. Then he typed, "She lied." The response came almost instantly. Of course she did. Julian stared at the screen, then typed again, "I want proof." A pause, longer this time. Then, "Meet me tomorrow, 7 p.m., Tribeca. I'll show you something you won't be able to unsee." Julian locked the phone. Leaning back in his chair, he closed his eyes. The cracks were no longer subtle. They were structural. And something told him, whatever Evelyn was about to show him, wouldn't just confirm the truth. It would change what he was willing to do about it. The bar in Tribeca didn't advertise itself. No sign out front, no obvious entrance. Just a narrow black door between a gallery and an unmarked office space. The kind of place that relied on discretion as currency. Julian noticed it immediately, not because it stood out, but because it didn't. Evelyn had chosen carefully. Inside, the lighting was low, amber-toned, casting shadows that softened edges and concealed intentions. Conversations stayed close to the tables. No one raised their voice. No one asked unnecessary questions. Julian arrived at exactly 7 p.m. Evelyn was already there. Corner booth, back to the wall. Line of sight to both the entrance and the bar. Control. She didn't stand when he approached, just watched him, her gaze steady. Assessing, not emotionally, but analytically. "You're punctual," she said. "You said 7, Julian replied, sliding into the seat across from her. A waiter appeared almost instantly, as if summoned by proximity alone. "Whiskey," Julian said. "Neat." Evelyn didn't order. She already had a glass in front of her, untouched. "You look different," she observed. Julian met her gaze. "I verified," he said. Evelyn's lips curved slightly. Not a smile, but acknowledgement. "And?" she asked. "She lied," Julian said. Evelyn nodded once. Of course she did. There was no satisfaction in her tone, no vindication, just confirmation. Julian leaned forward slightly. "You said you had something," he said. "Proof." Evelyn reached into her bag, but instead of handing anything over immediately, she paused, studied him. "Before I show you," she said, "I need to understand something." Julian's expression hardened. "This isn't a negotiation." "It's not," Evelyn agreed calmly. "It's risk assessment." Julian didn't respond. Evelyn continued. "Right now, you're in the early stage," she said. "Suspicion confirmed, but not fully processed. You're still hoping there's a version of this that doesn't destroy everything." Julian's jaw tightened slightly. "You don't know what I'm hoping for." Evelyn tilted her head. "No," she said, "but I know patterns, and I know what happens next." She leaned forward, lowering her voice just enough to keep it contained within the booth. "You're going to want details," she said. "How many times? Where? When? Every message, every lie, every overlap with your life." Julian didn't deny it. "Then you're going to face a decision," she continued. "End it quietly, or do something about it." Julian held her gaze. "And what exactly do you consider doing something?" he asked. Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Instead, she finally reached into her bag and pulled out a thin envelope.
She placed it on the table between them. Didn't push it toward him. Not yet. Open it, she said. Julian didn't hesitate this time. Inside, photos. Printed. High resolution. Time-stamped. The first one, Clara, standing outside a boutique hotel in Soho. Not alone. A man beside her. Mid-40s, well-dressed. Familiar in the way that suggested Julian had seen him before, but never needed to remember.
They weren't touching, but they didn't need to. The proximity said enough. Julian flipped to the next photo. Same location, different angle. Closer. Clara laughing, the man's hand at the small of her back. The third photo, inside, lobby reflection. Partial, but clear enough. Their faces closer now. Intimate. Undeniable. Julian's grip on the photos tightened, but his expression didn't break. How long? He asked. Evelyn watched him carefully. 6 months, she said. That's when I started tracking patterns. Julian looked up. You've been tracking them? Evelyn didn't flinch. I've been verifying, she corrected. Julian leaned back slightly, processing. Who is he? He asked. Evelyn's eyes held his. My husband, she said. The words didn't land loudly, but they settled deep. Julian looked back at the photos, then at her. You're sure, he said. Evelyn's expression didn't change. I don't deal in uncertainty. Silence settled between them again, but this time it was different. Heavier. Defined. Julian placed the photos back into the envelope, slower now, deliberate. And you brought this to me because, he said. Evelyn finally picked up her glass, taking a small sip before answering. Because now you're ready to hear the part that actually matters, she said. Julian's eyes narrowed slightly. And what part is that? Evelyn set the glass down, carefully. Information alone doesn't change anything, she said. You confront her, she denies, maybe confesses, maybe cries. You either leave or you don't. Julian didn't interrupt, because he knew she was right. That's not control, Evelyn continued. That's reaction. Julian leaned forward again, his voice lower now. Then what do you suggest? Evelyn held his gaze. And for the first time, there was something else there. Not emotion, not exactly, but intent. You take control, she said. Julian's expression remained still. Define that, he said. Evelyn didn't hesitate. You don't just expose them, she said. You decide when, where, and how. You make sure the consequences aren't temporary, they're structural. Julian felt the shift. This wasn't about truth anymore. It was about outcome. You're talking about revenge, he said. Evelyn didn't deny it. I'm talking about balance, she replied. Julian let out a quiet breath. That's a convenient word. It's an accurate one, Evelyn said. Right now, they have the advantage. They control the narrative, the timing, the secrecy. She leaned in slightly. I'm offering to change that. Julian studied her, carefully. You've thought this through, he said. Evelyn's expression remained calm. For months. And you need me because, Julian prompted. Evelyn's eyes sharpened slightly. Because you have access I don't, she said. And because they underestimated both of us. Julian considered that. Then, and what exactly is the plan? He asked. Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her bag again, this time pulling out her phone. She unlocked it, turned the screen toward him. A calendar. Highlighted dates, patterns, cross-referenced schedules, Clara's known events, her husband's travel logs. Overlap. Precision. This isn't random, Evelyn said. It's routine, predictable. Julian leaned closer, scanning the data. Every instinct he had as a lawyer, every skill in pattern recognition, analysis, strategy, activated. They think they're careful, Evelyn continued. They're not. They're just unchallenged. Julian's voice was quieter now, focused. You've been building a case. Evelyn met his eyes. Yes. Julian sat back slowly, and for the first time since this began, he wasn't reacting. He was thinking. strategically. "What's the end game?" he asked. Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Public exposure," she said. "Controlled, irrefutable. At a moment where neither of them can recover cleanly." Julian's gaze sharpened. "That destroys everything." Evelyn held it. Yes, silence. Then Julian asked the question that mattered. And after that, Evelyn's expression didn't change. "They live with it," she said, "the same way we do." Julian looked at her for a long moment, measuring, calculating. This was the third path. Not denial, not quiet exit. Something else. Something deliberate. Something dangerous. "You've already decided," he said. Evelyn didn't deny it. "I'm just giving you the option to decide with me," she replied. Julian's fingers rested lightly on the envelope. The photos inside. Proof. Reality. And now, possibility. "You understand what you're asking," he said. Evelyn nodded. "Yes." Julian exhaled slowly. "Then, what do you need from me?" he asked. Evelyn's eyes didn't leave his. "Commitment," she said. Julian held her gaze. And in that moment, the line between justice and revenge blurred completely. He nodded once. "Then we do it properly," he said. Evelyn's expression softened just slightly. Not relief, not satisfaction. Something closer to alignment. "Of course," she said, because halfway was never part of the plan. Outside, the city moved as it always did, unaware, uninterrupted. But inside that quiet bar in Tribeca, two people had just agreed to something that would not end cleanly, and neither of them intended it to. The first rule Evelyn established was simple: no improvisation. She said it without emphasis, seated across from Julian in a quiet conference room she had access to through a consulting firm she claimed to work with. The space was sterile, glass walls, neutral tones, a whiteboard untouched behind her. Control, again. Julian nodded. "And the second?" he asked. Evelyn slid a folder across the table. "No emotional decisions," she said. "Not from you, not from me." Julian opened the folder. Inside, timelines. Precise. Clara's known schedule cross-referenced with gaps. Her husband's travel records layered against them. Locations highlighted. Patterns circled. Julian recognized the structure immediately. This wasn't obsession. This was discipline. "You've been doing this alone?" he asked. Evelyn didn't look up from her tablet. "I've been doing this carefully," she replied. Julian flipped another page. Receipts, hotel bookings under corporate aliases, rideshare logs, fragments of something larger but not yet complete. "You said no improvisation," Julian said. "But this is incomplete." Evelyn finally looked at him. "It's incomplete by design," she said. "Enough to confirm, not enough to act." Julian met her gaze. "And now?" Evelyn's expression didn't change. "Now, we complete it." They worked in silence for the next hour. Not the uncomfortable kind, the efficient kind. Julian mapped Clara's recent communications, what little he could access without triggering suspicion. Evelyn cross-referenced with what she had already gathered. Two systems, now merging. "She's careful with her phone," Julian said. "Too careful. Messages are clean, no gaps, no anomalies." Evelyn nodded. "Same with him," she said. "Which means they're using something else." Julian leaned back slightly. "Secondary devices," he said. "Or encrypted apps," Evelyn added. Julian considered that. "Either way, we're not going to find it by looking where they expect us to." Evelyn's lips curved slightly. Exactly. There it was again, that alignment. Not emotional, strategic. Julian realized, with a quiet clarity, that he hadn't felt this kind of intellectual synchronization in a long time. Not with Clara, not with anyone. 3 days later, the first shift happened. It was small, almost insignificant, but irreversible. Julian stood in the hallway outside his apartment, his hand resting on the door handle, his phone pressed lightly against his ear. "She's home," he said quietly. On the other end, Evelyn's voice was calm. "Alone?" "Yes." A pause. Then, "Go in," Evelyn said. "Act normal. Don't confront. Observe." Julian closed his eyes briefly. "I've already confronted her." Not like this, Evelyn replied. Not with purpose. Julian exhaled slowly. This was the difference. Before, he had been reacting. Now, he was executing. He opened the door. Clara was in the living room, laptop open, a soft lamp casting warm light across her face. She looked up, surprised. "You're early," she said. Julian nodded, setting his briefcase down. "Wrapped up sooner than expected." He moved naturally, predictably, every gesture controlled. Clara watched him for a moment, then returned to her screen. "What are you working on?" he asked. "Campaign strategy," she said. "Deadline's coming up." Julian stepped closer, glancing at the screen. A presentation, slides, legitimate, or at least, convincing. "You've been busy lately," he said. Clara smiled faintly. "That's what happens when you're good at your job." Julian nodded. "And Thursday?" he asked casually. "Another late night?" Clara didn't look up this time. "Probably." Julian felt it, the pattern, the predictability. He turned away, walking toward the kitchen. "Dinner?" he asked. "I already ate," Clara said. Julian stopped, just for a second, then continued. "Of course," he said. Later that night, Julian sat in his car 2 blocks away from their apartment. Evelyn was beside him. Uninvited. Expected. "You didn't tell me you were coming," he said. Evelyn looked out the window, her expression unreadable. "You didn't tell me you were hesitating," she replied. Julian's jaw tightened slightly. "I wasn't hesitating." "You were thinking," she said, "which, right now, is the same thing." Julian didn't respond. Evelyn turned to him. "You're still looking for a version of this where she stops," she said, "confesses, fixes it?" Julian met her gaze. "And you're not?" Evelyn's expression didn't change. "No." The certainty in her voice was absolute. Julian looked away. "That's the difference between us," he said. Evelyn shook her head slightly. "No," she said. "The difference is that I already tested that version." Julian frowned. "What do you mean?" Evelyn's eyes returned to the apartment building. "I confronted him," she said, 2 months ago." Julian turned to her. "And?" Evelyn's lips pressed together briefly. "He denied it," she said. "Then he got better at hiding it." Silence filled the car. Julian processed that, slowly. "So this," he said, gesturing between them, "is your second attempt." Evelyn shook her head again. "No," she said. "This is the final one." The next shift wasn't small. It was deliberate. Julian found it in himself before he realized what he was doing. It started with access. Clara's email. He had never opened it before, never needed to. Now, he sat at his desk, late at night, the soft glow of his laptop illuminating a version of himself he didn't fully recognize. "This crosses a line," he said quietly. Evelyn's voice came through the phone, steady. "They crossed it first." Julian hesitated, just for a moment, then entered the password. Days blurred into structure. Meetings with Evelyn became routine. Not public, not obvious. Private offices, quiet bars, long drives where conversations stayed contained within the space of the car. They shared everything: data, patterns, observations, and slowly, something else. "You're different with her," Evelyn said one evening, as they reviewed another set of timelines. Julian didn't look up. "How?" "Controlled," she said. "Measured. Like you're already distancing yourself." Julian leaned back slightly. "I am," he said. Evelyn studied him. "And how does that feel?" Julian considered the question. Then, "Efficient," he said. Evelyn's gaze lingered on him for a moment longer than necessary. Not judgment, not approval, recognition. It happened the night neither of them planned for. There was no strategy meeting, no data, no agenda. Just a late hour, a half-empty bar, and a silence that didn't need to be filled. Julian sat beside Evelyn this time, not across. A subtle shift, but significant. "You ever think about stopping?" he asked. Evelyn didn't look at him. "No." "Not even for a second?" Evelyn took a slow sip of her drink. "I think about outcomes," she said, "not alternatives." Julian nodded. "That's not the same thing." "No," she agreed. "It's more useful." Silence settled between them again. But it wasn't empty. It was charged. Julian turned slightly, his voice lower now. "We're not just doing this for information anymore," he said. Evelyn finally looked at him. "No," she said. Julian held her gaze. "And that doesn't concern you?" Evelyn's expression softened just enough to be noticeable. "It should," she said. "But it doesn't?" Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Then, "No," she said. That was the moment.
Not dramatic, not loud, but decisive. Julian leaned closer. Not impulsive, not uncontrolled. Intentional. Evelyn didn't move away. Didn't close the distance either. She let it exist. Undefined. For exactly 1 second too long. Then she stood. "We don't blur this," she said. Julian remained seated, watching her. "Why not?" he asked. Evelyn's gaze held his. "Because the moment we do," she said, "this stops being controlled." Julian exhaled slowly. "And control is all we have." Evelyn nodded once. "Yes." But control was already slipping. Not in the plan. In them. Because the line they refused to cross was the same line they were already standing on. That night, as Julian returned home, Clara was asleep. Peaceful. Unaware. He stood in the doorway of their bedroom, watching her. And for the first time, he didn't feel anger. Not even betrayal. Just distance. Cold. Clean. Final. Julian turned away, closing the door quietly behind him. In the hallway, he pulled out his phone. A message from Evelyn. "We accelerate." Julian stared at the words, then typed back, "Tell me how." And just like that, there was no version of this where he walked away unchanged. The first time Julian lied, it felt calculated. The second time, it felt necessary. By the third, it felt efficient. That was how it happened, not as a collapse, but as a sequence of decisions that each made sense in isolation. Monday morning, 8:30 a.m. Julian sat across from Clara at the breakfast table, scanning emails on his tablet. The routine remained intact. Coffee, quiet, the illusion of stability. "You're working late again tonight?" Clara asked, not looking up from her phone. Julian didn't hesitate. "Yes," he said. "Client call, West Coast." A lie. Clean, uncomplicated. Clara nodded. "Same here," she replied. "Campaign deadline." Julian glanced at her briefly. "Of course," he said. They didn't question each other anymore. That, more than anything, confirmed the distance. By 9:15 a.m., Julian was in his car, parked half a block away from Clara's office. He had never done this before, never needed to. Now, it felt like due diligence. His phone rested on the dashboard, an app open location tracking. Not illegal, not sophisticated, just enough to confirm movement patterns tied to shared accounts and vehicle logs. Evelyn had been clear. "You don't need to break laws," she had said. "You just need to stop respecting boundaries they've already ignored." Julian had accepted that logic faster than he expected. At 9:23, Clara's car appeared. She parked, stepped out, checked her phone. Normal. Julian watched her enter the building. Waited. Counted. 5 minutes. 10. Then he started the engine and drove away. Verification, not obsession. That was the distinction he maintained. The next step was access. Julian sat in his office that evening, the city dimming beyond the glass walls, his laptop open to Clara's email account. He had justified it already. Transparency in response to deception. Balance. Control. Still, his fingers paused over the keyboard. "This is where you decide who you are," he murmured. Evelyn's voice echoed in memory. "No, this is where you decide what you're willing to do." Julian entered the credentials. Inbox loaded. Dozens of emails, campaign updates, client communications, internal threads. Nothing obvious, but Julian wasn't looking for obvious. He scanned timestamps, gaps, subtle inconsistencies. And then, a pattern. Recurring calendar blocks labeled vaguely, external sync. No participants listed, no location. Always late afternoon, always extending into evening. Julian leaned back slightly. There it was. Not proof, but structure. He copied the dates, sent them to Evelyn. Her reply came within seconds. Matches his schedule. Julian stared at the screen,
Alignment, confirmation. The descent didn't feel like falling. It felt like clarity.
Thursday evening, 6:45 p.m. Julian sat in his car again, this time outside a boutique hotel in Soho, the same one from the photos. Evelyn was beside him, silent, focused. "You're sure about tonight?" Julian asked. Evelyn nodded. "They're consistent," she said. "Routine creates exposure." Julian's grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "And what exactly are we doing?" he asked. Evelyn turned to him. "Observing," she said. Julian let out a quiet breath. "That's not what this feels like." Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. "That's because you're invested now," she said. Julian didn't deny it. At 6:52, Clara's car pulled up. Julian's body went still. She stepped out, dressed differently than she had that morning. More deliberate. More intentional. Julian watched every detail. The way she checked her reflection in the window. The way she adjusted her coat. The way she walked inside without hesitation. No doubt. No pause. Evelyn spoke quietly. "Now you see it," she said. Julian didn't respond. Because seeing was different from knowing. Seeing removed any remaining ambiguity. 7 minutes later, a second car arrived. Evelyn's posture shifted almost imperceptibly. "That's him," she said. The man stepped out, confident, familiar in his movements. Julian watched as he entered the hotel. No hesitation, no caution. "They think they're invisible," Julian said quietly. Evelyn shook her head. "No," she said. "They think they're safe." Julian reached for the door handle. Evelyn's hand stopped him. "Not yet," she said. Julian turned to her. "And when?" he asked. Evelyn's eyes held his. "When it matters." Julian stared at her for a moment, then slowly released the handle. Control. Always control. Back in the car, 15 minutes later, Julian's phone buzzed. A message. "Clara. Running late. Don't wait up." Julian stared at the screen, then showed it to Evelyn. She didn't react. "Predictable," she said. Julian typed back, "Of course. Good luck with the deadline." He hit send, then looked up at the hotel. And for the first time, he smiled. Not out of amusement, not out of satisfaction, but recognition. He understood the game now. The next phase began that night. Not with confrontation, with construction. Julian sat in his home office, documents spread across the desk, printed emails, timelines, notes. Not emotional, structured. He wasn't just gathering evidence anymore. He was building a narrative, a sequence, something that could be presented, understood, proven. "You're thinking like a prosecutor," Evelyn said over the phone. Julian didn't look up. "I'm thinking like someone who doesn't want this dismissed as speculation," he replied. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then, "You've changed faster than I expected," she said. Julian paused, just briefly, then continued writing. "Have I?" he asked. Evelyn's voice was calm. "Yes." Julian considered that. Then, "Or maybe I was always capable of this," he said. Silence. Then Evelyn replied, "That's the more dangerous option." Days passed, each one tightening the structure. Julian installed a secondary tracking app, legal, tied to shared devices, justified under the guise of security. Clara didn't question it. He began redirecting small details, suggesting changes to schedules, planting subtle variables to test reactions. "Dinner on Wednesday?" he asked one night. Clara hesitated. "I can't," she said. "Client meeting." Julian nodded. "Of course." Later, he confirmed, the hotel booking had shifted. Same night, same pattern. She adjusted. He learned. The traps became more refined, not to catch her in the act, but to confirm how far she would go to maintain the lie. Each test had a result. Each result removed another layer of doubt, until there was nothing left. One night, alone in his office, Julian looked at the man in the reflection of his darkened screen. Composed, focused, unrecognizable. "This isn't who you are," he said quietly. But the voice lacked conviction. Because the truth was, this version of him worked. It produced results. It gave him control. And control was addictive. His phone buzzed. "Evelyn."
We're ready for the next step. Julian picked it up. Define ready, he typed. Her response came quickly. We stop observing. We start positioning. Julian stared at the message, then typed, What does that involve? A pause, longer this time. Then, exposure requires a stage. Julian leaned back slowly. The pieces were aligning. Not just evidence, execution. I have an idea, he typed. Evelyn's reply was immediate. Good. Julian's eyes moved to the document spread across his desk, then to the city beyond the window. Cold, distant, unforgiving. So do I, she added.
Julian closed his laptop. For a moment, the room was completely still. Then he stood. Decision made. Not reactive, not emotional. Deliberate. Because at some point, the descent stopped feeling like a fall and started feeling like direction. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning. Subject line, Annual Northeast Corporate Law Summit, Speaker Confirmation. Julian stared at the email for exactly 6 seconds before opening it. Keynote panel, regulatory ethics, high-profile attendees, partners, investors, media, even a few political figures orbiting the legal industry. The kind of room where reputations didn't just grow, they solidified or collapsed. Julian leaned back in his chair, reading the details twice, then a third time. Time, location, guest list, audience, stage. He picked up his phone and called Evelyn. She answered immediately. You found it, she said. Julian didn't ask how she knew. Yes, he replied. This is it. A pause. Then walk me through it, Evelyn said. By noon, they were in the same room again. Glass walls, neutral tones. The same space where strategy had replaced emotion. Julian stood at the whiteboard now, marker in hand. Not reacting, leading. This isn't just exposure, he said. It's positioning. Evelyn sat across from him, watching. Explain, she said. Julian wrote 3 words on the board. Timing, context, impact. They don't just get caught, he continued. They get understood. Evelyn's gaze sharpened slightly. Meaning? Julian turned to face her. Meaning we don't reveal the affair in isolation, he said. We reveal it in contradiction to the image they've built. Evelyn didn't respond immediately. Because she saw it. This conference, Julian continued, is centered on ethics, professional integrity, public trust. Evelyn leaned back slightly. And you're planning to dismantle that in real time? Julian nodded once. Yes. Silence. Not hesitation, recognition. You've done this before, Evelyn said. Julian met her gaze. Not like this, he replied. But there was something in his tone, something that suggested he wasn't entirely unfamiliar with controlled destruction. They work through the structure methodically, not emotional, not personal, strategic. Clara would be there. That part was easy. Her firm handled public relations for several major sponsors. Attendance wasn't optional. Evelyn's husband, Marcus Hale. That was his name. Julian finally had it. Senior investment consultant, frequent panel attendee, carefully curated reputation. He'll be there, Evelyn confirmed. He never misses this event. Julian nodded, writing the name down. 2 targets, 1 stage. Now we define the sequence, Julian said. The next layer was evidence. Not just photos, not just timelines, something stronger, something undeniable. Julian opened his laptop, turning the screen toward Evelyn. Hotel records, he said. We can subpoena them, but that's not fast enough. Evelyn nodded. So we don't subpoena, she said. We extract. Julian looked at her. You've already thought about that. Evelyn's expression didn't change. I've been thinking about this longer than you have. Julian considered that. Then, access points? He asked. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. Front desk staff rotate every 8 hours, she said. But management logs are centralized, digital. If we get one internal credential, we don't need legal access. Julian's eyes narrowed. That crosses into risk, he said. Evelyn held his gaze. So does losing control, she replied. There it was, the line. Not just blurred anymore, moved. Julian exhaled slowly. "We do this clean," he said. "No illegal breaches, no shortcuts that can be traced back."
Evelyn studied him, testing. "And if clean limits the impact?" she asked. Julian didn't hesitate. "Then we redefine clean," he said. Evelyn's lips curved slightly. Not approval, acknowledgement. 3 days later, the plan had structure. Julian secured his speaking slot, not just as a panelist, but as a closing speaker. Final word, final impression, control. Clara didn't know yet. That was intentional. "Let her walk in unprepared," Evelyn said. Julian nodded. "Shock increases authenticity," he replied. Evelyn watched him carefully. "You're getting comfortable with this," she said. Julian didn't look up from his notes. "I'm getting effective," he said. The rehearsal took place in the empty conference hall the night before the event. Rows of chairs, elevated stage, large projection screen behind the podium. Julian stood at center stage, looking out over the empty room, imagining. Not the audience, the moment. Evelyn stood in the back, arms crossed. "Walk me through it," she said. Julian adjusted the microphone slightly. "I start with the expected," he said. "Ethics, accountability, professional standards." He paced slowly, measured. "Then I introduce a case study," he continued. "Real-world scenario. Anonymous at first." Evelyn moved closer. "And then?" Julian stopped, turned. "Then I remove anonymity," he said. Silence filled the room. Evelyn held his gaze. "In front of everyone," she said. Julian nodded. "Yes." Evelyn stepped onto the stage now, close enough that the distance between them was no longer formal. "And the evidence?" she asked. Julian gestured toward the screen. "Visual," he said, "time-stamped, correlated with their public statements, their professional roles." Evelyn's eyes flickered with something sharper now. "Complete exposure," she said. Julian didn't soften it. "Yes." They stood there for a moment, not speaking, just understanding. Then Evelyn asked the question that shifted everything. "And after that?" she said. Julian frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Evelyn stepped closer. "After they're exposed," she said. "After their reputations collapse, what happens next?" Julian's expression hardened. "They deal with it," he said. Evelyn shook her head slightly. "That's not an outcome," she said. "That's a consequence." Julian didn't respond. Evelyn's voice lowered. "Do you want them to lose everything?" she asked. Julian met her gaze. "Yes." "No recovery?" she pressed. Julian hesitated, just for a second. Evelyn saw it. "There it is," she said quietly. Julian's jaw tightened. "That's not hesitation," he said. "It is," Evelyn replied. "You're still drawing lines." Julian stepped closer now. "And you're not?" he asked. Evelyn's expression didn't change. "No." The words settled between them, heavy, final. That night, back at the apartment, Clara was reviewing documents at the dining table. Julian watched her from across the room, studied her, every movement, every detail. "You're speaking at the summit tomorrow?" she asked suddenly, glancing up. Julian paused. "You saw the email," he said. Clara nodded. "Impressive," she said. "Closing speaker." Julian held her gaze. "Yes." Clara smiled faintly. "You'll do well," she said. Julian returned the smile. "Controlled." "I know," he replied. Later, alone in his office, Julian reviewed the final presentation. Slides, evidence, sequence. Everything aligned, everything precise. His phone buzzed. Evelyn. "Last chance to adjust the plan." Julian stared at the message, then typed, "No adjustments." A pause. Then, "Good," she replied, "because tomorrow, we don't just expose them." Julian's eyes narrowed slightly. "We redefine them." Julian set the phone down, looked at the screen one last time, then closed the laptop. The setup was complete. The stage was ready, and for the first time since this began, there was no uncertainty left, only execution. The ballroom was larger than Julian remembered. Or maybe it just felt that way, now expanded by anticipation, sharpened by purpose. Rows of seats filled gradually with familiar faces. Senior partners, investors, journalists, legal analysts. Conversations hummed with confidence, with expectation. This was their world, and tonight, Julian would break it open. Backstage, he adjusted his cufflinks with steady hands. No tremor, no hesitation. The version of himself that had once questioned this path was no longer present. Only execution remained. A voice from the event coordinator. 5 minutes, Mr. Mercer. Julian nodded once. Across the room, he saw Clara, seated near the front, composed, elegant, fully integrated into the environment she had spent years mastering. She spoke briefly with a colleague, smiling effortless, controlled, unaware, or still believing she was. Julian's eyes moved past her, 2 rows behind. Marcus Hale. Relaxed posture, confident expression. The kind of man who assumed outcomes favored him. Evelyn stood near the side wall, partially obscured, her gaze fixed on the stage. Not on Julian, not on Clara, on the moment.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our closing speaker, Julian Mercer. Applause. Measured. Respectful. Julian stepped onto the stage. The lights adjusted, focusing. He walked to the podium, placed his notes down not because he needed them, but because it was expected. He looked out over the room, took exactly 1 breath, and began.
Integrity, Julian said, his voice calm, controlled, carrying effortlessly across the room, is often discussed as a principle, a pause. But in practice, it's a pattern. The audience leaned in, not physically, but perceptibly. This was familiar territory, comfortable. For most of us, he continued, professional integrity is measured by compliance, transparency, accountability within structured systems. He paced slowly, deliberate. But what happens, he said, when the system itself is not where the failure occurs? A subtle shift in the room, curiosity. Tonight, Julian continued, I want to present a case study. He turned slightly, gesturing toward the screen behind him. A blank slide. For the sake of clarity, I'll begin anonymously. No one objected. This was normal, expected. Julian continued. 2 individuals, both highly respected in their respective fields, both publicly associated with ethical standards, professional accountability, and reputational trust.
The first slide appeared. A timeline. Dates, overlaps, neutral, analytical.
Over a period of 6 months, Julian said, these individuals engaged in a pattern of behavior that directly contradicted the values they publicly upheld. Murmurs, faint, still controlled, still theoretical. Initially, he continued, the behavior appeared isolated, unverifiable. He paused, then added, until it wasn't. The second slide appeared. Photos, blurry at first, distance, then clearer, closer, recognizable. A shift in the room, not loud, but undeniable. Julian didn't look at the screen. He watched the audience, watched the moment recognition began to spread, watched the first expressions change. Confusion, discomfort, realization.
Clara's posture stiffened.
Subtle, but visible. Her eyes locked onto the screen, then flicked to Julian, then back again. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his expression tightening. Still controlled, still calculating. Julian's voice didn't change. Verification, he said, is what transforms suspicion into fact. Another slide. Hotel records. Time-stamped. Cross-referenced with public appearances, professional commitments, contradictions, patterns. Consistency, Julian continued, is what transforms isolated incidents into intent. The room was no longer quiet. Not fully. Whispers moved between rows. Phones shifted. Screens lit up. But no one left. Not yet. Because this was no longer a case study. Julian turned back to the audience, and for the first time, he removed the final layer. The individuals in question, he said, are not hypothetical. Silence. Absolute. They are present in this room. The words didn't echo. They landed. Heavy. Irreversible. Julian let the silence stretch. Then he turned toward the front row, met Clara's eyes, held them. Clara Mercer, he said. No hesitation, no softness. Would you like to clarify your position? The room fractured. Not physically, socially, emotionally. Every gaze shifted, every perception recalibrated. Clara didn't move at first. Her face remained composed, but too still now, too controlled, which made it obvious. "Julian," she began. Her voice didn't carry, not like his. Julian didn't interrupt. He waited, gave her space. Because space exposed. Clara stood slowly. Her eyes moved across the room, calculating, searching for control. But there was none left.
"This is inappropriate," she said, her voice steadier now. "Whatever this is, it doesn't belong here." Julian nodded once. "You're right," he said. "It doesn't belong anywhere." A ripple moved through the audience. Clara's composure cracked. "Not fully, but enough. You're making assumptions based on evidence," Julian corrected. Calm, precise. He gestured toward the screen again. Another slide. Messages, fragments. Enough to confirm intent, not enough to excuse. Clara's breath caught, barely audible, but visible. Julian's gaze shifted. Marcus Hale, still seated, still silent. Julian addressed him directly. "Would you like to contribute?" he asked. Marcus stood, slowly, composed. "I think this is a personal matter," he said, "and you're crossing professional boundaries." Julian tilted his head slightly. "Professional boundaries," he repeated. "Interesting choice of words." A faint ripple of reaction. Marcus's expression tightened. Julian took one step forward. "Would you like to deny it?" he asked. Direct. No escape. Marcus hesitated. Just long enough. Then, "No," he said. The word landed harder than anything before it. Because denial would have prolonged uncertainty. Admission ended it. Clara turned toward him, shock breaking through completely now. "You're not," she started. Marcus didn't look at her, didn't move toward her, didn't defend her. "I'm not going to make this worse," he said. And just like that, he stepped back. Not physically, but completely. Distance, separation, self-preservation. Clara stared at him. The realization hit in real time. He wasn't with her anymore. Not here. Not publicly. Not when it mattered. Julian watched it happen. Not with satisfaction, not with anger, but with clarity. This was the outcome. Not chaos, not explosion. Collapse. Systematic. Controlled. Clara turned back to Julian. Her voice was different now, lower, stripped of performance. "Why?" she asked. Not denial, not defense, just why? Julian met her gaze, and for a moment, there was something almost human in the space between them. Then it was gone. "Because you thought I wouldn't see it," he said, calm, final. "And because you thought it wouldn't matter if I did." Clara's eyes filled, not with tears, not yet, with understanding. Too late. The room had shifted completely now. No one was neutral anymore. Reputations recalibrated in real time. Phones captured everything. Not as gossip, as record. Julian stepped back from the podium. He didn't raise his voice, didn't escalate, because he didn't need to. The damage was complete. "Integrity," he said, his final words steady, measured, "isn't defined by what you say in rooms like this." A pause. "It's defined by what you think no one is watching." He let that settle. Then, "Thank you." No applause, just silence. Julian stepped off the stage. Evelyn was waiting. She didn't speak immediately, didn't need to. Her eyes moved past him, to Clara, standing alone now, completely exposed, completely isolated. Marcus was already gone. "You did exactly what was necessary," Evelyn said quietly. Julian didn't respond, because the moment wasn't finished yet. Behind them, Clara's voice broke through the silence. "Julian." Not loud, but enough. He stopped. Didn't turn immediately. Then slowly, he did. Clara stood there. No audience now, no performance. Just consequences. And for the first time since this began, there was nothing left to reveal.
only what came after. It was raining when Clara came back. Not dramatic rain, no thunder, no violence, just steady, quiet persistence. The kind that didn't demand attention, but refused to stop. Julian noticed it through the glass before he noticed her. She stood across the street at first, not moving, not approaching, as if even now she wasn't sure she was allowed. He opened the door before she knocked. Clara looked different. Not physically, nothing so simple, but the structure of her was gone. No polish, no control, no careful calibration of expression, just fatigue. And something heavier. Regret. "Julian," she said softly. Her voice didn't carry the way it used to. It didn't try to. He stepped aside. Not inviting, not rejecting, just allowing. Clara walked in slowly, her eyes moving through the space like it belonged to someone else now. Because it did. Julian closed the door behind her. The sound was quiet. Final. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was no script for this part. No audience, no stage. Just truth. "I didn't think you'd come," Julian said finally. Clara let out a breath that almost resembled a laugh. "I didn't think I could," she replied. Honest. Too honest for who she used to be. Julian leaned against the edge of the table, arms loosely crossed, watching her. Not with anger. Not even with curiosity anymore. Just distance. "They've cut me off," Clara said. No preamble, no strategy. My firm, the clients, everyone. Julian nodded once. I assumed they would. Clara looked at him. There was no accusation in her eyes, only recognition. "You knew exactly what would happen," she said. Julian didn't deny it. Yes, silence again. But this time, it pressed harder. Marcus's name never came up. It didn't need to, because his absence was the answer. Clara took a step closer. Not enough to close the distance, just enough to acknowledge it. "I made a mistake," she said. Julian's expression didn't change. "Yes," he replied. Clara swallowed. "That's not," she started, then stopped. Because even now she could hear it. How small it sounded. A mistake. As if it had been an accident. "I made a series of choices," she corrected. "Better. Still insufficient. But closer to truth." Julian nodded slightly. "That's more accurate." Clara's eyes filled now. Not dramatically, just inevitably. "I didn't think you'd—" She trailed off. "Do it?" Julian finished. She nodded. "Yes." Julian studied her for a moment. Then, "You didn't think I would act," he said. "You thought I would absorb it." Clara didn't argue, because she had. "I was wrong," she said. Simple. Unprotected. Julian straightened slightly. Not defensive, just present. "And now?" he asked. Clara hesitated. "Because this part was the hardest. I want—" she began, then stopped again. Because whatever came next had to be real. Not strategic. Not manipulative. Real. "I want a chance to fix it," she said finally. There it was. Not polished. Not persuasive. Just hope. Julian looked at her for a long moment. Long enough that she felt it. The weight of it. The evaluation. Not emotional. Structural. "Fix what?" he asked. Clara blinked. "Us," she said. The word felt fragile, unstable. Julian's gaze didn't soften. "There is no us," he said. Not harsh, not raised, just true. Clara flinched slightly. Not because of the words, because of the certainty. "I lost everything," she said quietly. Julian nodded once. Yes, no sympathy layered into it. No satisfaction either, just acknowledgement. Clara took another step closer. Now the distance was almost gone. "Is that enough?" she asked. Her voice trembled, not dramatically, but enough. "Or do you need more?" That was the question. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Something else. Something darker. Julian held her gaze, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something beneath the control. Not anger, not pain. Memory. "I could," he said slowly. Clara's breath caught. Julian continued. "I could make sure no one in this industry ever works with you again." Each word measured, precise. I could turn what happened into a permanent narrative. Clara didn't move, didn't interrupt, because she knew he could. Julian stepped forward. Now there was no distance at all. I could take what's left, he said, and remove it completely. Silence. Heavy. Absolute.
Clara's eyes closed for a second. Not to escape, to accept. If that's what you need, she said quietly, then do it. No defense, no bargaining. Just surrender. Julian watched her, carefully, and in that moment, he understood something. Not about her, about himself.
Control wasn't in destruction. That was easy, immediate, temporary. Control was in restraint. Julian stepped back. The space between them returned. Intentional, defined.
I'm not going to do that, he said.
Clara's eyes opened. Confusion. Disbelief. Why? She asked. Julian's expression was calm, steady. Beck,